Hello and welcome. I'm Jodi Carlton, creator of Spectrum Relationships and your host today. If you are in a relationship and you think one of you may have autism, this coaching program is for you. Be sure to subscribe to my channel to get updates and announcements of upcoming events. Join me weekly at 5 p.m. Eastern for a Q&A, interviews with special guests, or videos with guidance and tips for your relationship. So, what will we talk about today? Okay, so let's just start. I'm so excited to talk to you guys. It's been, I think we said about a year since I worked with you guys, and you went through my private intensive, but then also the communication program, which is now called Crack the Communication Code. Let me show everybody. That's the link to it. So I asked Matt and Jen to come chat with me about their journey and to just talk a bit about where they were when they first came to me and what that was like going through that. The private intensive I can't remember if you guys did 8 weeks or 3 months, but some people most people start at 8 weeks now, and then we add on a month or so if they need that. But anyway, so let's just start with what brought you guys to me. Do you remember how you even found me?
I found you.
You did.
I found you. Yes. I was doing all the research at the time, trying to fix everything, and thankfully, I found you.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure we did it twice, didn't we?
Yeah, we did it twice.
We did it twice.
Yeah, I remember that now. You did. You went through the intensive twice. Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about what it was. You know, Jen, you said you were trying to fix the problems. What is it that, if you think back, what was going on and what were you looking for? I mean, what was going on that prompted you to try to figure out and fix it?
Well, during that time, Matt and I had, both gone through some significant loss. He lost his grandfather and I lost my mom. And so it was hard for both of us, and we were trying to communicate to each other in our own ways, and it wasn't working because he wasn't seeing my view and I wasn't seeing his view. And so we were going through a lot at the time. And I think we both had, we had what we thought what a perfect marriage would look like. We both wanted that. We both desperately wanted it. We both came from not the greatest upbringings, not terrible, but not the greatest. And we both didn't want that. So we were both trying to avoid that. But with that said, I had my things that I needed to work on, but I didn't know it. And so with the passing of our people, like, we were at that point, you know, it was our breaking point basically, to where we were trying so hard at this and it wasn't working, and we were both exhausted and tired. So that's when I reached out to you, because I thought to myself, I was like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. And unfortunately, divorce, it came to mind, but I didn't want a divorce. I wanted it to stop. I wanted this cycle to stop. And I never once wanted to leave him because he's my best friend. But I didn't know what to do. You know, I knew there were issues, but I just didn't know what to do.
I want to, before I give you a chance to kind of add to that, Matt, I want to just mention that, you know, you said you both had been through some pretty major losses and you were really struggling to understand each other. And that's something that I see quite a bit, where couples can be sort of trucking along and maybe struggling a bit. But then when something big happens like that, then there are just no tools there and then the misunderstandings just skyrocket, and that's when it just really starts to unravel. So anyway, let me turn that over to you, Matt. What do you remember about that time period and how this all, when you got to me, where you were?
Yeah, right. So I think you kind of touched on it there too, was there were all sorts of things still going on, like issues that would be, not talked about. I mean, she would discuss them. Talking wasn't really part of the thing, but like the same issues would come up over and over again, and I would think that they would be handled and then come up again, which I just thought was part of the relationship, up until, like she said, my grandfather and her mom passed, and then it seemed like there was no, I guess, resolving any of it, even for a short period of time. So it just got to the point to where we were both very miserable, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, we were sad and miserable and exhausted.
Yeah, exhausted. That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You said that talking wasn't really a thing. So can you tell me more? What do you mean by that? When you said, things would come up, but talking about it wasn't really a thing.
Well, so from my point of view during that time, it was the thing, whatever it was, would be, she would bring it up, she would explain, how she felt and what was going on, and I would try to resolve that. And in my mind, that was, hey, let's resolve it, let's fix it, be done with it. And I would have thought that would have, like, after me fixing it, we're done. Why talk about it again? And then it would come up again.
Right.
Because it wasn't really resolved.
You know what the funny thing is, if you don't mind me jumping in?
Oh, yeah.
I actually wrote this down. What we no longer do, what we were doing at that point in time. We no longer try and control or want each other to conform to each other's views, but we accept and try to seek understanding. We now have the freedom to be just us, two individuals with two different views. And because of that, we have, love and more respect for each other. So beforehand, I was trying to have him conform into the way I feel, and he was trying to do the same. He's like, this is all finished. This is done. But I'm like, no, it's not. We got to continue. And we were just continuously trying to control each other and how we view life. And it wasn't working.
And that is such a huge thing that people do. And we go into our relationship, and then that whole communication piece. Let's start with, what you bring to it. And you mentioned your past, your childhood, and Jen, you said something about expectations. And that's, we bring into our relationship what we expect from our partner, what we expect from ourselves, how we're going to show up and how we're going to do things, how we're going to do life, how we're going to communicate. And then when that starts to fall apart, what you just said, we go into like convincing mode, and, you need to see how good, the way I'm doing this is what makes sense. This makes sense, and you need to understand. Or, you need to understand me and why I'm, so we just, and then we end up in that boxing ring, where we're opponents instead of partners. And that's such a common thing in all relationships, not just neurodiverse. That's a dynamic that happens when people start hitting those differences. But what you just said is so key. When you start to realize, okay, I am me, you are you. And it's not it's not for me to convince you to be more like me, but to see you, know you, and for you to see me and know me, and then accept and acknowledge that we're not going to be the same. And then that's kind of where the deal breakers come in, that 2 or 10 scale, where you figure out what's really important here versus what can we let go. Yeah. So before we go into kind of what, some of the, how what you remember going through the program, that like the big moments that were like, let's talk a little bit about neurodiversity and how that first kind of became, made it to your radar, when you're like, wait a minute, we're dealing with some neurodiversity here. What prompted that?
So prior to you, we had reached out to a therapist, just a regular therapist.
No, she was a neurodiverse therapist.
Was she?
Yes,
okay.
She was.
Which may have been the reason.
I reached out to her.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because we had tried before you. That didn't work out. But part of what she had suggested was me looking into Asperger's and whether that was something that might have fit me and how I, so basically just if it fit me. I did that research. I contacted, my mother, kind of talked through some things about my earlier childhood where I had been diagnosed ADHD, which I wasn't aware of. She didn't relay that information to me. I guess it wasn't a big deal. I was a functioning adult. What did it matter? But yeah, between that and kind of her explaining more about how I acted then and how I act and, do things now, it really just fit. So that's how I came about it.
So it was a professional that kind of tipped you off in the beginning. So what are some of the traits and characteristics that resonated with you, Matt?
So very black and white, which I know is kind of can be a dude thing, but even when compared to the other guys at the shop that I work at, it's just very logical for me, and emotion is not there at all sometimes. And there were some tests that I think you had pointed us to for kind of evaluating that on a numerical scale, and it was very low, if not altogether not there. So
the emotion, you mean?
Yeah. So that was probably a big one. A lot of the other things are probably ADHD, a little OCD, but just all together adding up to, I'm probably have Asperger's. So.
Yeah. So a lot of folks do get that ADHD diagnosis first. And so, oftentimes it's because providers don't recognize really high functioning autism.
Yeah. And I think, I'm 32. So during that point in time, it wasn't really, even getting ADHD was probably new to them. So
kind of on the leading edge of this whole, and a lot of folks consider ADHD part of the term neurodiverse. And I wouldn't really disagree with that. It's kind of like, I know I've probably told you guys, there's the sensory processing issues that we see oftentimes, well, really all the time, there's some degree of sensory processing in autism, but you can have sensory processing issues and not be autistic. The same with ADHD. We pretty much the concentration and focus and the executive functioning difficulties that we see in ADHD, we absolutely see that in Asperger's and autism spectrum, but you can have those in ADHD without being on the spectrum. So
I forgot about the sensory processing. Actually, I think during one of our sessions with you, it was she had sprayed me with some water just because she was playing, and it set me off. I got upset, and that wasn't a fun time, but kind of brought it to light that that was a thing. And I don't particularly like light touch, so which is good to know, because
it's so good to know.
It lets her know that I'm not trying to push her away when she's just trying to
Yeah, I remember you all. There was a story about laying in the grass. In the backyard. Do you guys mind sharing that? You remember Jen talking about?
I really enjoy being outside and being in the outdoors and his presence. And so just I asked him, I was like, can we just go out and sit and be together? And that's, I guess that's when it was brought to light that it's uncomfortable for him, but I didn't know it at the time. So of course I took it as if he doesn't want to spend time with us.
Yeah, I think we actually
our family
did go try. And we just sat. We didn't have blankets or anything, right? Because it was impromptu. So we just kind of went out and sat in the grass, which then I moved and was jittery the whole entire time.
And then you went inside.
Yeah, just very quickly got up and left. So.
And when you don't know, And when he
Yeah.
doesn't know, how is he supposed to communicate that, and so.
Well, and then,
nice to-
and so, yes, so this is where that interpretation of meaning really causes so much distress and misunderstanding and confusion in relationships, because for you, Jen, he's just leaving and not wanting to hang out with you, and you're not realizing that the feel of the grass to Matt is really, really uncomfortable. And Matt, on your side of it, it's one of those things that if you don't, your frame of reference is that this is uncomfortable, and to you, it's surely everybody feels this too. It's like we all just kind of assume that other people feel and experience the same thing we do. So why would you need to communicate that? Maybe Jen can just, maybe, I don't know why Jen doesn't like to feel this because it's horrible, but I'm not, so we don't even know to say it out loud to our partner that this is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was another story I remember where it came up that it was also uncomfortable, Matt, because of the sensory discomfort you have, for you to even see your daughter be messy. And there was a story, I think, when she was playing in the creek, and that was really uncomfortable for you.
There were a lot of things going on with that particular one. Do you want to, or you want me?
You had.
Okay. So we went out with some friends. They were doing a barbecue next to the river, but it was a rainy day. So I brought extra clothes. I brought rain gear.
So prepared.
And everything with us, because I knew what was going to happen, and I knew it was cold there as well. But Jen still wanted to go swimming with Sky, so they brought their swimsuits. That was not something I was going to do. So anyway, they did. They went. They swam, and coming back, obviously very muddy. It was raining and everything was dirty. So then Sky and Jen were dirty. And Sky was at that point upset because she was cold and wet. So getting her changed, but during that process of getting her changed, and not me, I wasn't touching her. In the process of Jen changing Sky, in the truck got dirty. Some of the clean clothes were again messied. Messied, is that even a word? We're messed up and we're wet. So in just the whole experience of her being muddy, the truck now being muddy, her being upset, Jen now getting upset because I'm frustrated at the whole situation. Not a fun thing. And then, obviously that was upsetting her as well, because I was being, can I say I was being a dick?
You just did. It's fine.
I mean, you have the ability to cut that out if you need to, but yeah, I was being,
you just shut down.
Yeah.
That's whenever he has a moment like where he's overwhelmed, he just shuts down. It's not necessarily, he has a little bit of attitude, but he shut down. Understandably so.
What do you remember? Yeah, Jen, what do you remember about that experience from your perspective?
From my perspective, okay, so I love to live. I love to experience life. And we go down there. It's cold, a little bit cold, right? But it's beautiful. And it smells great. Like all of my senses are just enjoying this moment. And swimming in the creek when it's cold, heck yes, why not? You don't experience that all the time. And it was stunning. There was fog everywhere, and Sky wanted to do it. So I wanted her to experience it. From my perspective, it's beautiful. Yes, a little cold. Yes, you're getting muddy, but it's worth it. So we go down to the water, and Sky's giggling. She's loving every moment of it. And even in the water, even though it's cold, she loves it, and it's gorgeous. But when we were going back to it, poor thing fell in the mud, and that's when it went south quick. She didn't like the mud on her body like that. So yes, Yes, there was a lot, and I understand his perspective, especially now, but like going into it, I'm just like, let's live, let's experience life together and make these memories. But yeah, his truck got a little dirty. So
Yeah. And so in that moment, you said he shut down. What did that look like?
he literally just went into the truck and shut the door and was just no longer present.
Yeah.
And just done.
Yeah. I had to step away.
Yeah.
And even when I got over that, and it took a little bit, maybe 30 minutes or so, I think I listened to music in the truck. But even after I got done with that and came back out I still wasn't like fully there as I had been prior to. Probably a little bit of guilty there, but I mean, we got over it.
Yeah, we did.
We got over it. We learned.
Yes, we did.
But yeah, I mean, so
what I'm trying. I think you guys were working with me when that happened, or was that before?
I think so, actually. Yeah.
I think you were working with me, and I remember that being something you brought in. And so, what was it that was different for you then? Like, how would you have interpreted that before, Jen and Matt? You too. Mm-hmm. And then, what do you remember about how we talked you through that?
So the way I what I did was I got a little huffy puffy ever so slightly and hurt. But beforehand, I think I would have cried. Like it would have hurt.
What would the meaning have been to you?
That maybe.
And I love the truck more than you.
Yes, yes, exactly. Like things were, the cleanliness of it all was more important than the experience of our daughter. Like and I guess myself too, but I was really wanting to do all of this for her because also I was enjoying it too, but that was more important than that.
Yeah. And what was the meaning that you ended up with?
Afterwards, like after, I guess.
Oh, after like speaking to you, I got a better perspective of his side of everything, and it wasn't just that. It was there's his side of it means just as much as my side of it. Like we were both going through this situation, and it wasn't just my perspective.
Did it feel personal still
during it? Not as much, because we were going through. We were with you at the time, so not.
I think
as
it was
much.
still kind of early on. Even
it was.
So, I mean, we were still very much learning and
new to it.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing in the beginning, especially when people are still learning. I tell folks, look, you're still going to do this. This is still going to happen. The same dynamics, the same meanings, the same misunderstandings are going to happen. But what you can do now is you're starting to raise that awareness, and after the fact, you can go back and say, "Oh, I see what happened there."
We got really good at that.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously we still mess up and things still happen, and in the moment is still in the moment. It's kind of hard to think it all through there, but I mean, we don't blow up anymore.
It's straight to like, what did you mean when you said this? Clarification, and then the solution. How can we fix this?
So that was kind of one of my next. You guys are just leading right into one of my next things I wanted to ask. Is what are some of the new tools? So let's talk about that some more and expand on that a little bit, and tell people what kind of things come up, and then what tools are you using? How are you? What's different now about how you interact when something comes up between you?
I think we start with kindness and understanding instead of comparison, control.
Yeah.
Things are met with kindness. I love this man. He loves me. That's the base of us, that's where we start. And then we communicate basically, right?
Yeah, that and I think to kind of clarify that, maybe even was prior to being on with Jodi, we got to the point where it was always just like, well, we've been here before, so so I don't want to do this again. I'm frustrated. Why are we doing this again? That type of thing. Mm-hmm. Now it's more like, okay, well, obviously there's clarification or like a timeout because I'm stressed about the situation or something, right? It's like back off from the what's causing us the issue, reassess, recommunicate better.
You know what's funny? I don't remember our last argument.
Wow, that's a pretty big statement.
So he's like, I assess, I do all of this. I'm like, when was the last time we assessed? You know, because it does just go straight to try to find the solution. Like we do all the steps. Like now it's very organic. So it's not like da. It's, which nothing's wrong with that. That's how we were in the very beginning. But it's very organic now. But I don't remember the last time we've had a little.
Not a big one.
No.
Well, that's it's so awesome that you're saying that because and that's what I tell folks is right now it feels like it doesn't feel natural. You're having to think yourself through the steps, and you're still going to really be going through the same cycle in the beginning until you're able to go, what do we do there? How, and then over time though, it becomes organic. Like you said, it becomes the new way of interacting. Yeah. And that's, I love to hear that from you guys that, you don't even really fight anymore. But as opposed to what you were saying, Matt, previously, previously you're like, here we go again. You're cycling through. And that contributes to avoidance. And I want to just mention how the dynamic that you guys were in is so similar to other people where, here we are again. So Matt, you retreated, and Jen, what you pursued, you were like, I'm going after that.
I'm a fixer. I need to fix this.
Right. And even though Matt's a fixer too, he would
but
say,
mine was like,
why are we still talking about, we're not going to do this again. So I'm going to go away. And Jen's like, oh, no, you're not. I'm going for you. Right. And so now what I'm hearing, though, is more of a partnership between the two of you. And something else I wanted to mention, just to reply to what you said, Jen, about we start with kindness. I tell couples all the time, people feel attacked and criticized and abandoned and all of these emotions. And I'm like, do you feel fundamentally that your partner, your spouse loves you and cares for you and doesn't want to harm you? And most people who are in a relationship that's really, got that ability and willingness and motivation to fix this, most people say, yes, I know my partner's not actually trying to harm me. And I tell people to start with that. And that's what you just, the kindness and the respect, you start there. When you have this misunderstanding, you start with, okay, that hurt, that was confusing. I don't know what that is, but I know he's not trying to hurt me. I know she's not trying to hurt me. So let's figure out what happened here. And that's what it sounds like you guys have gotten really good at doing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what are some examples? Can you guys share any examples of things that might come up for you that you then use these tools? It may be so organic that it's hard to even think about, but what can you, any kind of examples you can think of?
I can't remember what the conversation was. This has been a little bit ago. But anyway, I can't remember what the conversation was, but basically she'd asked me a question about something and I had answered immediately, not thinking anything of it as far as like feelings or deeper meaning behind. I was just answering a question. And so then it was either she took that bluntness in the wrong context, maybe, or that, what I had answered was actually very crass and crude. So then it was, well, can you explain that a little further? Gave my mind time to process the question and, you know, more fully answer. And then it was yeah, but
Okay.
it was a better resolution at the point in time.
Sorry.
You don't answer. It's been a while.
We can't.
No, I think
you.
you're actually, you know, no, that's a great example, because regardless of what the actual content was, you know, the actual thing that she asked or said, and then the way you responded, the dynamic, what you did, and Jen, instead of reacting, assigning that meaning, and then, you know, putting that into the narrative of that conversation, you clarified. You've learned to say, hey, what did you mean?
Explain.
Yeah. And then Matt, that gives you the opportunity to go, okay, hold on, let me actually figure out what I do mean here, and
think about it a little bit.
That.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So those pauses, you know, it's like a pause. It's like okay, what did you mean? Okay, let's clarify that. It clarifies, but it keeps that narrative from being formed that is incorrect when you stop and go, okay, I didn't understand that. That's so good to hear. What would you guys say, if you think back, what was some of the biggest moments that you had as you were learning this process, where it was just like, oh, okay. What do you remember?
I have one. I was putting a lot on Matt, like a lot. I was expecting him to be my girlfriend. I was expecting him to be my therapist, my bestie, all the things. I was expecting everything. It was just him and me. We married really young, and then we moved away from family. And so we did our jobs and everything, but I don't know, building friendships for me personally it wasn't, I mean, I did have friends, but I don't know, I put a lot on him. But now, I don't have, self-worth comes from within. It doesn't come, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like when we were doing things with you, I'm sorry, you're probably going to have to edit this out. When we were, the bird, I brought the bird up to you a long time ago. How I thought it was so beautiful and gorgeous. And I brought it to Matt, and he's like, it's not the bird. And I'm like, I got crushed inside, because I was like, this means so much to me. And you think it's just a bird? So I put a lot of myself, how I view myself and how he views it, I dimmed it. But now I flourish in it. I've made a career out of it, the beauty, the things that I love, and he respects me for it. But what I'm trying to say is I no longer put my self-worth into what anyone else's view. You know what I'm trying to say?
I do. And I remember seeing you go through that transformation, because you were really, your identity was so, it was tied. Yes. It was tied to Matt's, what Matt's perspective was on things and what his values were. And if he did, like with the bird, you are such a creative artist. And I think we talked about, you know, the whole 4K versus standard def.
Yes.
That's one of the analogies I use is, you know, Jen's got a 4K personality, high definition, and Matt's more that in that black and white. And so he didn't necessarily appreciate or care for some of the beauty. You even just talking about the creek a minute ago, you know, that's just not something that matters as much to him. And so you, though, were placing your own self-worth and your values in what he valued. And like you said, dimming your own light, and kind of mirroring him and dimming your own light. But I saw you completely transform and start to embrace, I can be me and he can be him. And, you know, we don't have to have the same interests and
exactly.
And then you really took that and embraced it. And like you created a whole business since we worked together that's thriving. And that's just such a beautiful thing. Matt, what's that like for you to be on to see her change like that?
So let me think about it for a second. So to come home and her to be happy because she's achieved something through the day, it's really good. Like seeing that seeing the happiness, and not coming home and it being all about me and my day, because that's what it was prior to, basically. Even with Sky, even with the different jobs, which now this is her job, this is what she's doing, this is what she's achieving.
I wouldn't say it was no. He's always been really good about like, how's your day been? Like, and I talked your ear off when I did photography, always artsy. But yeah, it's always been talked about, but I don't know. It's different when it's
maybe
like
seeing it.
Maybe seeing it
and seeing the achievement.
But I wanted to say something. I'm sorry. I wanted to say something compared to the bird that I told you about, how his reaction was. Fast forward now, just a few days ago or a week ago or something like that, we're in the car and I'm driving him to work because his truck broke down. And he says, Jen, look how beautiful those trees are. They're on fire. So like, I feel appreciative. Like he has moments like this where he just appreciates the beauty that I hold so dearly, and he expresses it, and it means the world to me. But so I just wanted to let you know that's awesome.
So what was that moment like for you? Was that were you appreciating it yourself, or were you knowing that she would?
Knowing that she would.
And see that
I drive by it every single day. It's
his drive to work is gorgeous.
You see it every day, but in that moment, you knew that she would really appreciate it and it would give her a lot of joy. And so and that is what it's all about, you guys. That's so cool. It's not about having to experience it yourself, but knowing our partner and knowing, oh, wow, she's going to think this is really great. So I'm going to point it out to her. That is communicating to Jen that you really know her. You know her and you appreciate her. You see her. You know what that, and so, and the difference too is, Jen, you're not needing him to love it the way you do,
right?
But to acknowledge and see that you love it.
It's really sweet.
Yes. And what Matt was saying too is to come home and see your joy in life, to see you happy. That's important to him. Whereas before, a lot of that joy was tied to Matt's reflection. Yeah, Matt's reflection of you. Yeah. And so that comes down to that codependency that we talked a lot about. That comes up a lot in the work that I do. And those of us who you guys know, I consider myself recovering codependent, and we get into relationships where we're wanting to take care of others. We're kind of compulsively looking for what they need so we can be their everything, but then we also put our own identity into that too, and we lose ourselves.
Hardcore. That was me. Hardcore. I didn't even know it, but how can you until it's pointed out?
Well, you can't. That's right. It's born out of our backgrounds, which is part of what we're bringing to it, and it's just woven into our psyche. It's woven into who we are until it is pointed out. So what would you guys, what advice do you have? So there are people who are going to be watching this video that are just now wondering if somebody's on the spectrum. There are going to be people who've already figured it out. There are going to be people who are at the brink of divorce and have lost hope. There are going to be people who aren't quite there, but are still really struggling. And there are going to be people who are a little bit further into the process, even some clients that have been through the program. What's some advice that you have, or guidance, or what do you have to say to these folks?
I could say,
she's got her list.
I
over
do.
here.
I wrote notes. So we both, I'm just going to read it out. Both of us have felt more pain than we ever knew was possible and more deep joy than we ever knew existed. And even though it was very difficult, like it was the hardest thing, Jodi helped me with PTSD because I had trauma from my childhood. So that was woven up with everything because I was bringing a lot of things that I didn't know. So healing from that, learning from it was the absolute hardest thing that we've gone through as a couple, but it's worth it. It is worth it. And yes, I would do it all over again just to be where we are right now. So.
Okay.
So understanding me kind of was like my first stepping stone. Sensory overload, which I wasn't even really aware of until we kind of talked about it and sussed out all the different ways that affects me, and then relating it to her, right? Light touch, because she likes touching. I can handle the touch that I give her,
Right.
put it on her hand or whatever. But if she tried to reciprocate, I couldn't stand it for very long.
Mm-hmm.
So letting her know that wasn't me backing away from her, it's just, it's too much.
Preference.
So
you prefer not to happen.
So understanding me and all the different ways that the Asperger's, the ADHD, the rest of it affected me first, to then, and then I could step into it and be like, okay, and you need your love languages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, understanding
right?
myself.
Understanding you.
Taking the test that you suggested helped us immensely, getting to know us as us, and then it helped us as a couple as well.
Yeah.
So that self-awareness that we kind of go bumbling through life, and if somebody says, do you know yourself, you're like, yeah, of course I do.
I think so.
Right. And then we start to realize that, wait a minute, okay, hold on, maybe I don't actually know myself as well as I thought I did, or I don't realize how different I am from everybody else, or how unique I am. And that's not a bad thing. It's just we go through life with our own experiences, and we don't realize how different our own personal perceptions and experiences are from what others are experiencing. And I do remember, Matt, when we were working together, the whole sensory piece, and this happens all the time when I ask folks, do you have any sensory differences in there? People are like, nah, I really don't. And then I'm like, okay, well, and I start going down the question list of, well, what about this? And what about this? Oh, well, yeah, actually, And so that was part of, for you, that awareness of, oh, okay, I do experience the world differently. And the word, though, is different. And this is something that when a lot of folks are afraid of that neurodiverse label, because they're worried that they're going to be pegged as the problem. They're going to, this relationship is your fault because you have this thing. But what you guys just said is exactly what is necessary, is that we each learn ourselves, and we learn, okay, this is me and this is you, and we're different. We're not supposed to be the same. And okay, now I see you, I see me, and let's figure out how to do this together. And you guys have really just embraced that beautifully. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and then, after that, then it was like, okay, these are the communication steps, so we can work on these together. And
the label for me personally as nothing. I mean, it's not important.
The label of neurodiverse.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think it's important. It's not our relationship and how we communicate. That's the importance. The label itself, I don't.
Yeah. Well, because it isn't that big of a. I mean, it's not. It is part of who you are and part of who Matt is, but we all have these things that are part of who we are, but it's really just more about what we do with that. And like, that's the communication piece. So what would you say, we've already touched on some of the tools that you guys use. what are some of the things that are there anything else you can think of right now that you're really doing differently in the way that you communicate? You mentioned the starting with kindness, and clarifying. Is there anything else that has just become kind of part of your everyday way of communicating?
Patience.
Patient.
No, I say that. Okay, so when we started, a big thing, his love language was acts of service, and something that I've noticed from him is the pressure for me to do it all, to do the job, to clean the home and everything. He's been beautifully patient, and when I say that, like, it's not something that's even come up anymore. Like, there's no more overwhelmed. He comes home and yeah, there might be a whole bunch of clean laundry on the couch, but then he still starts to, I have a dream husband. He helps fold the laundry, and like it used to bug me because it would be a personal stab to me. Like, I would take it as a personal stab. Like, I haven't done this, now he has to. Oh my gosh. But he's been very great at communicating that that's not the case at all.
Can I jump in here? Because what you just said is the double-edged sword that so many women especially struggle with. So on the one hand, they need their partner, their husband, to recognize that this is part of just parenting. The house is messy. When dad comes home, just pick up what's there. We're in this together. But so women desperately want that from their husbands. But then there's that other side of the sword that you just said. But then I also feel like, I feel guilty that I'm not doing it. I feel judged because I feel like my partner's like, why isn't this done? So if I see my husband picking up the laundry on the sofa, then he's thinking, why didn't she get this done? And I feel criticized and judged, right? I see you guys smile. Yeah.
That doesn't come across your mind at all, does it?
No, not at all.
Never has. I'm the one that put that on him. Like,
and Jen, oh my gosh, you're totally owning that. And there are so many women who are going to hear this, who are going to be able to relate to that. I know, because I talk to them every day, and that then puts their husbands in an impossible position because you need it from him. But then when he does it, you're like, oh, I feel so judged and criticized, and so that's part of that codependency though. And once we let go of that, and we're like, you know what? Yeah, I couldn't get to that. Okay. It's just, having kids.
Life's hard.
Yeah. Life is hard. So, wow. Okay. Anything else? Anything else that just pops into your mind, or anything else you wanted to talk to me about today that we haven't covered? What's on your list that's over there?
Well, to add additional to, there have been not many events that we've gone to, but a few where it's been like, I'm really not into this. And I knew that up front. So we would take, separate vehicles. I would last as long as I could in that situation. And then, I could back out, and we had pre-planned that.
Mm-hmm.
Or, at the event where I just back away for a little bit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I remember that's something that we talked about as a strategy for you guys when you went out with friends, or if it was like a social gathering, and Matt, you knew in advance you were going to hit a limit. You guys were still trying to do it together. You were trying to go, and you would need to leave, and Jen, you'd want to stay, and that would be frustrating for both of you. And so we talked about this, just take separate vehicles. And Jen, we even talked about how do you approach your friends with, why Matt's leaving. So what's that been like for you now that you guys have shifted and are using this strategy?
It's not a big deal. I don't find it to be a big deal. It's like, yeah, he's got to go. It's not a big deal,
And see, that's the thing. In your mind, you aren't assigning that meaning to, oh my gosh, he's leaving. I've got to explain this, and this is embarrassing. That's a whole mindset shift. If it's not a big deal to you, it won't be a big deal to them. If you're totally good with it, they'll be like, okay, what,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then you guys each get what you need, and you get to hang out together for a while. And then Matt, you get to go home and not feel pressured and stressed about being there. And you can get to go ahead and find your parking space, that you, I remember that was a thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yes. Forgot
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. Anything else you guys wanted to bring up today? This has been great.
So parenting, that's changed in a good way. I'm no longer the helicopter mom that I once was. I feel like at that point, codependency, yes, and control. Like I needed to know control is something that I really needed. And now, not so much. I'm able to breathe,
Let me just respond to that really quickly while you're thinking. Jen, that's it's so forthcoming for you to say that, and so true, because it's so much a part of this whole dynamic that it really isn't one partner. We're both always bringing our own stuff in, and for you to be able to recognize, okay, this is part of what I was bringing to this that was contributing to this thing, and it's both of you learning and healing and growing that has really gotten you where you are now. And there are a lot of people who are really hurt and in a lot of pain, and I tell my clients all the time, we are very painfully aware of what is wrong with our partner, what our spouse is bringing to it, what they're doing, but it's a lot harder to look at us and go, okay, what am I doing to contribute to this? And you're just beautifully, sharing how you saw your share in this. And Matt, you too, you knew you had to really get to know yourself. And once we're willing to be vulnerable like that with our partner, there has to be safety. There has to be safety. And you guys, your safety was in knowing that you do indeed love each other. That safety was there. And then you were able to be vulnerable to really start looking at yourselves and doing your own work. And now it's, a year later, it's so wonderful to talk to you guys and see, Jen's been pinging me off and on the last year, and she'll be like, we're doing great. You'll be on a live or something. And it's great to talk to you and hear all this. It's just fantastic. I'm so happy for you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to real quick. When I got with Jodi, I was asking her, help me with my marriage. Something is wrong. And then Jodi analyzed this. She does her magic and she's like, Jen, we have work to do. Like, what? No, I wasn't completely oblivious to it either. Like I knew obviously there's two stories, there's two humans, and I had a background that was fun. And so I knew that there was work to do, but I was surprised just a tad that I had a lot of work to do.
You're not alone in that. Especially when I'm doing the intensive and the neurotypical partner is coming into it thinking we're gonna look at how neurodiversity is affecting our relationship. That's going to be the focus, and that's why a lot of people who are the identified neurodiverse are like, I don't know about this. So when we do start diving in, when I start diving in with the neurotypical partner, same reaction as wait, what? I didn't know we were here for me. I didn't know we were going to do this part. But you really embraced it, and look at the results.
Look at the results.
Mm-hmm. You said you've been through a lot of pain. It's been hard, but it's worth it.
Yeah, it is absolutely worth it. My parenting beforehand was fear-based. So when I say control, it was fear of what could happen.
Yes.
So I needed to control it so nothing would happen. Or a relationship, fear-based. Mm-hmm. And that had a lot to do with my upbringing and PTSD and all the things. And now that that's sorted out, which is very important, I definitely support and recommend getting help if you have, if you need it. But yeah, so
That's a huge thing. The fear-based parenting, I think, is the driving force for so many parents. The what ifs. We talked about what ifing. What if, what if. And there's a difference between what ifing and knowing that whatever happens, I'll deal with it. I can handle it. I will handle it, and I can handle it, because we can't what if everything. It's impossible.
and you can't control everything either. And
Mhm.
yeah.
It's really empowering. You feel like you've got control, but really when you let go of the control, you actually are even more empowered.
That is very true. And oh my gosh, the that happens when you let that happen. It just, before I was very all the time, and now it's a different life.
I can see a real difference in you, because I walked alongside you during a lot of that process.
You saw me cry a lot.
But that's part of that. That's part of the healing. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to add, Matt?
No, I'm good. This is
Okay. Well, I appreciate you guys taking the time to talk to me. It's so good to talk to you guys and to see your faces. And this video is really going to help a lot of people. I have another person who went live with me who was I don't remember. She may have been in one of the coaching groups that you guys were in, but I get so much feedback from her, and I know people are going to love to watching this. It's going to give a lot of people hope and direction, and I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. And come back anytime if you guys have anything you want to add or anything to share. Just shoot me a message and we'll hop on a video.
I think she still watches some of the lives and stuff.
I do. It's one of my interests.
Yeah, I see you pop in there occasionally.
I do. I enjoy it.
That's great.
Full of beautiful knowledge.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Well, you guys have a great holiday season. It's for everybody watching. We're about to begin to the Thanksgiving and Christmas holiday here in 2021. But all right, you guys take care, and hopefully we'll talk again sometime.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.